Listen, I would love to continue. Can you give me 5-minute break and then we'll continue?
Absolutely.
Okay, fine. All right.
Absolutely.
All right.
So I wanted to ask you further. So I'm hosting these discussions, as I mentioned, with a more liberal Muslim scholar and a more conservative Muslim scholar, and I'm woefully unprepared for it because what the hell do I know? But it seems to me that to whatever degree it's possible that olive branches might be offered when they can be. And so that's partly why I was curious about this issue of revealed truth. I mean, what do we do when we have competing claims to revealed truth? And apart from war, because war in some sense is about axioms that can't be given up. And that war is just not an option for us in a sense, not an option like it was, because the possibility of a gated
I have thought about this a great deal. So I have a quick answer, but it took me decades to develop. And that is, if my criterion is not, is your religion true or mine true? My criterion, I have two. One is, what type of people do you produce? Nothing else interests me. If atheists produced kind and wise people, I would give atheism much more seriousness than I now do. So my criterion is, one, what type of people do you produce? And two, do you bring people to the God of the Ten Commandments? That's it. If your religion affirms that God gave the Ten Commandments, I am a fan of your religion. If your religion does not affirm that, then it may be beautiful. I don't disqualify that possibility, but it is not divine revelation, given that. Remember, when we say divine, we're talking about the God the Jews introduced to the world. You can't hijack our term. And so you can make up your own God, but the God that was brought into the world is the God of the Old Testament, specifically the God of the Torah, specifically the God of creation, Exodus, and Ten Commandments. If you affirm those, then you are a kindred religion to mine and have an essential truth to it. I don't believe in Jesus Christ, but I do believe that Christians who bring the world to the God of the Torah and to the Ten Commandments are doing God's work.
So, okay, so then that begs a broader question. I mean, we're not currently, there's no current major religious dispute that's worldwide between Christians and Buddhists, let's say. And so where does that leave religious believers who aren't allied with the central book of the West, broadly speaking?
I don't have an issue. Remember, since I believe God judges people by their ethics, I don't care if you're Buddhist. If Buddhism has created in you a good person and given you wisdom.
I see. So you're using adherence to the Ten Commandments as an explicit description of what constitutes ethical good, essentially.
Right. Yes, it is. But I admit, I fully acknowledge Buddhists are not teaching the Ten Commandments as such. I understand that. Certainly, not a Sabbath day. By the way, not all Christians are teaching the Sabbath day either. 50% of the Catholic priests and Protestant ministers I've asked, do you believe Christians are duty bound to observe the Sabbath, have said no.
So what do you think about, Christ was asked, this is outlined in the New Testament, which of the commandments he thought was first and foremost, which is an interesting question, right? Because it posits that there's a central ethic that manifests itself across the 10 rules that's still implicit. And Christ had an answer to that.
Right, love God and love man.
Yes, which is, quite an answer. And what was the comment? And no one dared ask him any more questions after that, which I think is quite comical. And it's one of those little markers that makes you think that something was really going on. It's because the story is so interesting. But I mean, in Buddhism, is there an implicit ethic that matches the ethic that's implicit in the Ten Commandments? And of course, there are many more commandments than 10.
I happen to have studied Buddhism in England under a Buddhist professor, Trevor Ling. And my take, and I'm not an expert in any way, but I have some understanding, I think, of Buddhism. This is not its question. Its question is ultimately how to avoid suffering in this world and to reach the light or whatever nirvana would be translated. I don't know, Buddha, whichever term you use, Sanskrit or otherwise. So, for example, he said, and by the way, it changed my life. When he said it in class, it was in England. He said, the Buddhism teaches that all pain in life comes from desires and expectations that are not fulfilled, or even not fulfilled, just from desires and expectations. It changed my life because from that day to this, and I've written a book on happiness and I wrote a chapter on this, I have no expectations, and it is one of the reasons I'm happy. Everything, therefore, if I wake up tomorrow without an aneurysm, I think I'm the luckiest guy in the world. So I adopted the.
And do you think that's equivalent in some sense to like subverting your will to the will of God? Is that the same idea?
No, nothing to do with God. Zero to do with God. As far as I'm concerned, it's pure luck. If I'm hit by a drunk driver tomorrow or not is a matter.
Sorry, that isn't what I meant, Dennis. I must have phrased the question improperly. Is the Buddhist idea that desire, expectation is the cause of suffering, is that analogous to the idea that in Judaism and Christianity that people give up their own egotistical will and follow the will of God?
It's an interesting read. I don't know, because let's see. I'll tell you why, at least for Judaism. I can't speak for Christians. And this was the second part, which I rejected. I accepted dropping expectations. It was to me brilliant. I utterly rejected dropping desires. I desire a family. I desire a cure for cancer. The list of desires I have is endless. And certainly Judaism would never want me to drop desires.
Well, and Buddha, Buddha reached